Hey, we are officially live, folks. Hello, hello. Welcome as you come in. Just gonna make a quick change here to the deck. If you're just joining us, thank you for coming in. There we go. That's better. All right. I'm getting organized over here. And today I'm so excited about this session. What I like to do, folks, if you've ever been to one of my webinars, one of our webinars, is we like to kick off first by just giving everyone a minute or so to jump in. Most of you are probably coming off of another meeting or just trying to get yourself ready to sit down and listen to the information today, which I promise to make as informative but also entertaining as possible. The topic of estate planning can really bore a lot of people, but we're going to make this fun, I promise. So if you are coming in, let's go ahead and get our fingers warmed up because there will be a live Q&A at the end of the session, as always. And so if you want to use the chat box or if you want to use the Q&A box, which I believe both are open here for you. Yep, I can see this here. Then go ahead and tell me, let's see, what is one highlight of the summer for you so far? One highlight of your summer. I'd love to hear from you guys. I wish I could see you. It'd be a lot more fun if we were really together. Right now, I can only see my face, and I want to at least hear from you. So don't be shy. Go ahead and type it into the chat or the Q&A box. What is one highlight of your summer so far? Maybe you're traveling somewhere or you're moving. I know like a lot of people that are moving right now. I personally just moved all the way from Denver, Colorado to Tampa, Florida. So, oh man, moving is crazy. Okay, so Gary says Hurricane Bernil. Yes, Gary, I hope that you are okay and you're safe. Joseph, grandson's 13th birthday. Kimberly, fireflies are moving in. Oh, yes, I love the fireflies. That's wonderful. Brett's taking a trip to Italy. Oh my goodness. Oh my gosh. Ayla says she's going to Yellowstone in September. That is something to look forward to. It is on my bucket list. Matthew, leaving for a hiking trip in Alaska. That is incredible. I have a friend that used to live there and she always tells me about all the delicious salmon. Stephen just got back from an Alaska cruise. Super curious what you thought about that, Stephen. It's halfway over. I know, Gary. Don't remind me that summer is halfway over, please. But I did just move to Tampa, so I'm no longer in the Denver snow anymore. I'll probably miss it for sure. But yep, Dana, happy for you. So my big highlight personally, yes, I did move from Denver to Tampa, but I also recently got engaged. I'll just shine the ring for you guys. And that was last Friday. So I still feel like I'm on cloud nine right now. And it's such a fun and refreshed feeling to the relationship. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you. Gary got chickens too. Okay. All right. I promise we're ready to kick off now. Thanks, guys, for just a little bit of banter in the beginning. I think it's always nice to just open up with one another. And we have a lot of good information to cover. So we're going to jump right in. Looks like pretty much our numbers have evened out. And if you're here with me today, I just want to say thanks. It is the summer. You could be doing other things right now, but you are investing in your business and you've decided to come here. So today's webinar is called 6 Tips to Nail Your Next Estate Planning Seminar. And I'm super excited to dive into this topic. Now, before we get into these tips, and if you're thinking about doing a seminar, which could be in person, it could be a webinar, you might be thinking about how to optimize your strategy, or if you should outsource, or if you should do it in-house, whatever that looks like for you. But before we even get into any of that, I do want to lay some groundwork. What is your role in estate planning, right? Why is this such an important topic? Why is it a hot topic right now in our world at White Glove and Acquire and LeadJig? Because our advisors are getting such great results with seminars on the topic. Well, why? I really like to start at the core and then we'll kind of build out from there. Now, I also like to hear from you. That's why I kicked off with a poll. I'm sorry, with a question. And now I'm going to kick off with a poll. So the first question that I want to launch right here, just right now, as you sit on this webinar and you're getting ready to learn about this topic, do you consider yourself to be an estate planner? Yes or no? I'll give you just a few seconds here. Love it. Love seeing all the engagement. Okay. I'm going to end the poll in just 5 seconds, and I'm going to share it back with you. And I can already tell you that a shift is absolutely happening. So looks like one more of you just answered. All right, end poll, and I'm going to share the results. Now, there's a big shift happening right now in the advisor space, because I can tell you, if I would have asked this question even just 6 months ago, or a year ago, or even 3 months ago when I asked this question in person from a stage and nobody raised their hand, the fact that 65% of you said yes and 35% of you said no shows me that this shift is happening. More and more of you as financial advisors are sort of inserting yourselves into this important process with your clients, which is absolutely wonderful and exciting. And it's probably why we had so many sign up today for this webinar, because now you want to really get into, well, I'm offering this service, or I know I need to offer it, but how can I really market it? And how can I put it front and center of my business and my branding and marketing to really attract more clients, to better serve my current clients? So this is super exciting. I love to see this, guys. Okay, so I'm going to, oh, I don't know if I shared those results or not. I hope that I did. I guess I didn't, but you can see them here. All right, so I'm going to move on to this next item here. And first things first, what I always like to say is that the topic of estate planning is a business accelerator. It's a business accelerator for not just you, obviously for attorneys that are doing the work, even for CPAs, right? But really anyone that is surrounding a person, a human being, and helping them with their financial situation. So you are at the heart and center of that. And that is why I am so passionate about this topic. And in general, again, it is a business accelerator. But I can tell you this all day long. I can give you stats. And yes, I'm going to give you some good information today. What's more important to me is you actually hearing it from advisors themselves. So I want to play just a quick video. This is Kurt Stahl. He started his business hosting seminars. Like, he became an advisor, he launched a business, and he immediately started hosting seminars with us. And at first he started hosting these seminars called Taxes and Retirement. And then he said, you know what, I think I want to move into doing estate planning. And a big boom sort of happened for him and his business. And so I'll let you hear from him next.
And I built my entire business on Social Security seminars. However, at the last Host University that I attended, Dean really talked a lot about the success people were having with estate planning seminars. And, you know, I just could not visualize, how do I do that? I'm gonna have to talk about all these different types of trusts, and there's all this knowledge that I don't have that I'm gonna need to use in those seminars. And then I'm gonna be selling a service, wills and trusts, that are not a part of my business. But after listening to him at Host University, I realized that it could be different from that. And I signed up to do an estate planning event, my first one. And I literally was so completely busy for weeks up to it that the day before I was supposed to do it, at 8 in the morning, I had a call with Dean because I had no presentation and no idea what I was going to say. And Dean spent about an hour or 45 minutes with me talking through how these other advisors are doing estate planning, and that you're really not talking about the documents. What you're talking about is the strategies. And the strategies are something that I do all day long. Primarily, they're tax planning strategies, strategies to lower the volatility in your holdings, strategies to get the best outcomes from your assets in retirement. So once I understood that I didn't have to know all the ins and outs of all the different kinds of trusts, and once I spent an hour or a little less than an hour with Dean talking about how to put this together, I put together a PowerPoint that day, and the next day I presented it, and we had extraordinary outcomes on that. We signed up a lot of first-time visitors, and since that event in January, we've literally brought in over $74,000 of immediate revenues, and that's things like fixed index annuities or commission-based products. And then we brought in enough new assets under management to generate over $14,000 a year going forward.
So let's quickly just zoom in on those results. And this is really, it needs to be updated, to be honest, because he's continued to do these estate planning seminars. But you can see here, he's obviously partnered with White Glove, so that's kind of the cost there of 2 estate planning workshops. But immediate commissions, then when you really think about 10 more years of business, because estate planning is such a sticky point for clients, because it is just, you're really getting to the core of their entire life and their family and their next generation. There's more commission to be considered there. The ROI is 8 to 1, and typical good marketing ROI, people will tell you, marketers will tell you, 4 to 1, right? So you see, this is nearly double. And then you think about that for the lifetime value, 15 to 1. So Kurt has had a lot of success. He's not the only one. I've had advisors tell me, even that aren't doing estate planning seminars, right? But just incorporating estate planning into their business has added tremendous value, has added more AUM, has added more product sales, all the way around, just better relationships. I think the reality is that we really all have to consider is this: every single client is going to die. This is taboo. This is something Americans don't like to talk about. We want to talk about life and energy and what we're going to do with our money and how we're going to invest it and the things that we're going to do in retirement and beyond. But the reality is, every single one of us, me and you included, are going to die. And what you don't want is you don't want them to, have that experience in their life and then they come to something like this. Nobody wants this, right? Nobody wants this. Like, this is not how it's supposed to go. We don't want this. So we need to make sure we're putting ourselves in that trusted position to help our clients. But, and there's a big but, it's all about, where do you play a role as a financial advisor? Where does an attorney play a role? And even now in today's day with this big shift happening, where does technology play a role? Let's start by just identifying and defining what is estate planning. And I've bolded a couple words here if you can see, but estate planning is the process by which an individual or family arranges the transfer of assets, keyword assets, in anticipation of death. An estate plan aims to preserve the maximum amount of wealth, keyword wealth, possible for the intended beneficiaries and flexibility for the individual prior to death. So again, transfer of assets, wealth. You are absolutely in this picture. I feel that, first off, I have so much respect for some of the best estate planning attorneys in the space that I've gotten to meet and even present alongside. But what I think has happened is that for a long time, the term estate planning was almost sort of robbed by the legal community. And it doesn't mean that you aren't an estate planner or you're not an estate planning strategist. That you're not involved in that process. The days of sort of just outsourcing and closing the door are really, in my opinion, coming to an end, but also by what data is showing in this big shift that's happening. But it is something that you're doing. In fact, many of you are already doing estate planning in your business. So let's kind of define, what is the advisor's role versus the attorney's role? And I'm sure you already know this, but again, laying some groundwork here for our why. Now, an estate planning attorney is going to handle the documents, right? Because when you really think about it, there's the documents and then there's the strategy surrounding all of the documents. And Michael Kitces has a really good article on his platform about like how advisors and estate planning attorneys can collaborate. Keyword collaborate. There needs to be more collaboration in this arena, but strategy is something, like there's even examples in that article. And if I can find it, I'll drop it in the chat. But there's examples in that article of where, an attorney has said, here's the document we're going to go with, but the advisor wasn't really notified. The strategy wasn't there. It actually never got funded. So it really never even counted, right, from a legal perspective. So the attorneys are doing the documents. They make the recommendations, not you. The wills, the trust, power of attorneys, healthcare directives, beneficiaries, but you're doing the strategy. So you're organizing the assets. You're actually the one funding the trust or the plan. And yes, you work along the designating beneficiaries line, especially across their different accounts, providing insurance, products, advising on tax advantages. All of this surrounds the estate planning documents themselves. So it's the strategy versus the documents. Now, when you really get granular, you can see some of these things on the screen here that are probably quite familiar to you, right? So step up cost basis, Roth conversions, 529s, life insurance, right? When you're having these conversations, they all tie back to the estate plan. And if that is missing or that's in place, but this is missing, then it's not really fully complete, right? So I want you to just kind of think about it in this way. And it sounds like most of you on this webinar are already thinking about it in this way. The fact that you answered yes up front, when most advisors in the past traditionally have answered no, I'm already super impressed. Now, I like to take a sort of a step back too and, share with you, why does this really matter to me? Like, why should you listen to me? Why should you listen to us at White Glove and Lead Jig Acquire? Well, when I started in this industry, on the left, I was just kind of smiling and dialing, calling financial advisors all day long, really learning the lingo, understanding, their business structure and succession planning, mergers and acquisitions. I've helped advisors with branding and marketing and technology, your CRM, really spanning the gamut here. And over time, as I started to, sort of move my way up the ranks in the companies I was working for, and then eventually launching my own company, going out, traveling, speaking on webinars just like this, doing it on stage, giving keynote presentations included, I really started to understand like there are gaps in this space as far as what consumers demand and what advisors are supplying. But there's also gaps in what you're supplying and how you can supply it. Like, what is the providers in the space, the technology providers, the service providers, how are they supporting you to be able to close those gaps with those consumers and sort of their demand? And what I've found is that estate planning is like in that perfect category, right? There's such a big gap. And we're going to look at the data here in a second, specifically on what this gap looks like. But whenever there's a gap, there is an opportunity. Whenever there is a gap, there is an opportunity. So when I see this sort of space between what's being offered and what's actually desired by clients, then that right there is what I call a marketing magnet. And so that is why I'm so passionate about this. I have gone out and taught advisors about estate planning in general, but really I've focused it on the technology side and the marketing side of it, because there's this big boom that's happening. Most of you on this webinar probably already know. In fact, I'd love to hear from you if you want to type it into the chat or the Q&A box. Are you using estate planning technology? If so, what are you using? There are a lot of different technologies that have popped up. I mean, we all started with, Trust and Will, and Trust and Will is a nationally recognized brand. They've struck some really big partnerships, and they have served a lot of Americans. They've helped a lot of Americans get a will or a trust, and they've also helped now advisors. And then you start to see some of the other tools trickling in, like FP Alpha, for example, having launched their estate planning sort of section of their platform, along with all the other things that they do so well. You have wealth.com, you have Encore Estate Plans, which I've done a webinar with White Glove. And so it really is just becoming this sort of growing category, vanilla, for example. And so that's a bit of what I talked about in this webinar. But what's really, really important, right? So there's like this big asterisk with estate planning and advisors is UPL, and that is the unauthorized practice of law. So if you are going to insert yourself in this space, and I believe you should, you also have to be careful, because you don't want to have this sort of UPL looming over you, right? Unauthorized practice of law is essentially like everything but providing client education. So if you're telling them you should start this type of trust, or you should be doing this type of document, and you're not an estate planning attorney, then yes, you are practicing an unauthorized practice of law. So we don't want that. But again, what it isn't is just providing client education. And so that's what all of our advisors are doing at White Glove. That's what all of our hosts of seminars and webinars, are doing, is they're just really providing the education. Here's the legal side, and here is the life side. And so we're going to get into some of that as well. And I'm just going to quickly pop in to the chat here and just make sure I'm up to date on everything. I know we had a quick Q&A as well. Okay, wonderful. Awesome. Okay, so moving along, as I've mentioned, attorneys handle the documents. All right, so there's a lot of different type of documents here that go into the foundation of a will, of a trust. And this is exactly what attorneys are there for. Again, if you're collaborating with them, if you have relationships with them, then it should be a two-way street. It shouldn't be a, hey, here's a client, I'll refer you out, and that's the last you hear about the estate plan. As they build that plan, there should be back and forth that says, all right, let's look at the strategy around these different accounts, around these different documents, and that should be something you're collaborating with. Of course, again, there's technology, and that is really streamlining the process, making it more scalable for you to even offer the conversation around estate planning with your clients, and allowing them to even get more hands-on than ever before. And that is empowering as well. There's an empowering component of technology that allows your clients to get hands-on and sort of build their plan. They're co-creating it with you. Perhaps they're, consulting with an attorney along the way, but it really, allows them to sort of take some responsibility in that process. Okay. Now, moving along, now we're going to talk about the why, right? So why should you start educating on estate planning? We understand that you have a role in it and that it's an important role. And we understand the strategy in the documents. And we know that if you're going to take something like this on, you're already going to differentiate yourself from a lot of other advisors because there is such a gap. But let's talk about that. Why is this even happening today? Well, we all know this, right? Most Americans don't have an estate plan. 58% of Americans don't have an estate plan. And so again, that is a huge opportunity. It's sort of a gap in the space. It's an opportunity that you can kind of come in as a trusted financial professional and really help them with. But for the Americans that even do have a plan, so outside of that 58%, here's the questions that most people may not be asking, right? Has it been reviewed lately? Is there potentially a disaster waiting to happen? Have you moved? Did you get a divorce? Did you change states? Did you have a baby? If you were to ask someone if they had a financial plan and they told you, yeah, I built one in 2015, you would probably laugh, right? You'd probably say, oh, well, that's not updated, right? We need to work on getting that plan updated. It's the same thing with an estate plan. If an estate plan hasn't been looked at in 5 years, this is absolutely an opportunity, a window of opportunity for you to come in and say, well, let's take a look, right? Let's have a conversation about what we can, make sure is totally up to date. Again, did you move? Did you get married? Did you go through a divorce, have a child? There's so many different scenarios there. So again, this is a big opportunity for you. Now, here is the gap. You've probably seen this online. Why? Because a lot of the people in this space that care about this topic, they've been saying it over and over again. And for good reason, right? When you have some good data, you want to use it because it helps paint the picture, helps tell the story here. 93% of clients expect estate planning services from their advisor, and yet only 22% of advisors provide it. Now, this has probably shifted a bit since 2022. Absolutely. I'm seeing it happen right in front of my eyes. But in general, there is a gap between what your clients are expecting and what is being delivered to them. And it's not just estate planning. There are other sections here. You can look at this graphic, and I'm happy to share my slides with all of you in a follow-up email after the webinar. But you can see here like what that gap looks like across all different components. But estate planning is a big one. And so we want to be able to, again, take advantage of this and put ourselves in a position that will differentiate us from other advisors down the street. Now, this one is interesting to me. 90% of heirs choose to leave their benefactor's original advisor when it comes to intergenerational transfers. Now, I personally think this goes back to what I was saying before. There's not enough collaboration on the attorney front from attorney advisor, but beyond the lack of collaboration, if you're not actively serving your clients in the estate planning arena, whether it's through technology like a Trust and Will or wealth.com, or it's, through sort of a good attorney relationship that you have collaborations with, 90% of them are going to say, hey, when, this person passes away and we're an heir and we're taking these assets, we're going to move to a different advisor, or maybe they just, they go ghost or whatever happens, right? But I think this is because there's, again, when you put yourself in the seat, you also get to extend yourself to that next generation. If you're helping Bill or Sally focus on creating a plan, then that plan is going to naturally extend to any children that they may have. And those conversations will naturally extend to those children. It's all opportunity there. So what would happen? What would happen if more of you started putting yourselves in that seminar educator on the topic of estate planning role? If you sort of wear that hat, and again, it doesn't have to be an in-person seminar. Maybe that's not your thing. Maybe you've been burned in the past. I totally understand. I've heard horror stories. Maybe it's a webinar that makes you feel more comfortable. Or maybe you do want to really go all in. Some advisors love dinner seminars. Others hate them. It's really what comes down to you and what we can work with you on. But what would happen in general if you just started stepping up in that arena and started positioning yourself as an estate planning educator, because you are an estate planning strategist? Inevitably, as I've mentioned, you will differentiate yourself. Absolutely. Why? Because not a lot of advisors are doing this. Now, this is growing, absolutely. So it's an opportunity for you to say, I am different because I'm not just focusing on investment management, or I'm not just building the financial plan, but I'm also going above and beyond. And we're going to cover estate planning, and maybe you're doing tax planning, whatever that looks like. It's a differentiator. It is a marketing magnet. Also, discover more assets. When it comes to talking about an estate plan, to working on the estate plan with their advisor, with the attorney, through the technology lens, most people aren't going to leave assets out, right? It's different than like a prospect not telling you that they have 3 different accounts over here with an advisor. Because if you're building that estate plan, if you're co-creating and talking about the strategy around it, then likely they're going to want to make sure all of their assets are protected. So we've seen that. You'd sell more products. Inevitably, that is just what happens when you're working on protection and legacy planning and estate planning. Inevitably, that is the byproduct, is you will sell more products if that is your thing, if that's how you work in your business. Deepen relationships. Again, this is extending to that next generation. It's not just the client, but it is their family as well. So if there is anything that you take away from today's session, which I hope there's a lot you take away, but if there is one thing that you take away, it is this statement: educating on the inevitable will elevate your business, because the inevitable, well, it's inevitable. And again, every single client is going to die, unfortunately, but it is the reality. So educating on the inevitable will elevate your business. Now we're going to get into the fun stuff, the actual tips to nail your next estate planning seminar. This is, for me, what I love to talk about the most. And this is data that, yes, comes from my own experience as being a professionally trained public speaker, someone who's spoken several times, who's taken a lot of stages, traveled all over the country speaking. And I love to share with you what I've learned, but also this is coming from your peers. This is coming from over 50,000 different advisor workshops. And we use the word workshops because these are educational. These are not sales pitches. These are come and learn about what you need to know about your estate plan. And that is a lot of data to pull from. And that is exactly what I pulled from here. This is coming from some of the best hosts that work with us, advisors that host seminars. We call them hosts. And what their success has been like, what has made them successful, and sort of bundled up into 6 main tips. Look, whether you work with a company like White Glove or not, which obviously I'm a huge advocate for as chief evangelist, or whether you decide to do this on your own, or just get started on your own and then maybe start to outsource, you're going to get value from these 6 tips. That's my promise in every webinar that I give. So I'm just going to quickly, yes, Kim, there will be a replay. So Kim asked if there would be a replay. Yes. So what we're going to do, folks, is we'll send out a replay link and we will send out the slide deck. So you'll have both of those to refer back to after this webinar. Okay, so let's get into the fun stuff. Now, there are some trends that we're seeing. So I want to cover this before we hop into tip number 1. I've kind of already covered this first bullet point, right? Consumer demand is outpacing advisor supply. It's just what we're seeing in our workshops. Every single estate planning workshop, nearly every single one that we have hosted, has had some good outcomes. Whether that's, there's a lot of people that signed up, or there was a really good amount of attendance, or the follow-up process was really strong, the appointments being booked were strong. That shows us consumer demand is outpacing advisor supply in this department. Estate planning allows for deeper conversations. Again, you're not just talking about estate planning in an estate planning seminar. You're talking about tax strategies, life insurance, Roth conversions, the retirement vehicles you specialize in, the stuff like the back of your hand. And as Kurt mentioned, he was a little afraid. And then he realized, I know my stuff. This is not just here's a will and this is the different types of will and trust. And no, it's not that. It's very much strategy. And then finally, again, it's a differentiator. Perfect. Excellent. All right, just keeping up with the chat here. Again, folks, feel free to drop any questions in. We will have a live Q&A at the end of the session. Okay, tip number 1. And guys, just so you know, so I can make a commitment here. My plan is to try and get through these tips for the next 10 minutes. We'll wrap it up and then we'll open it up for Q&A. If I start talking too much, just let me know in the chat. Okay, tip number 1 is market multiple channels. So I always say all roads lead to Rome, but only if people know about them, right? So if you don't know that there's a side street that gets to Rome, you're not going to take that side street. It's the same thing with your seminar. You can do so much work in creating a beautiful presentation, and you have the suit and you're looking really good and you got your hair done. Maybe my ladies, you're getting your nails done, whatever that looks like. But if nobody knows about the seminar, then what was the point, right? So how do we help ensure a lot of people know about your seminar? We market to multiple channels. Now, at White Glove, we're doing all of this for you. You don't have to lift a finger, but I just want to give you something here for consideration. Really, there's three main areas that you're going to want to promote your seminar. Social media, because that's where people go to get social, to engage, to learn. Event sites and pages like Meetup and Eventbrite, and even your email list. I threw a little picture here up at the top right, Chamber of Commerce. And this is a quick tip I got from my friend Samantha Russell, who was an expert marketer. But she was working with an advisor who started a webinar strategy, who was doing webinars focused on business owners, but this is also perfect for estate planning. And they went to their local Chamber of Commerce and they said, hey, we're doing a webinar on this topic. Can you promote it? And they promoted it for them, and they had great turnout. And I think with the role of estate planning too, and the topic there, you could go to your local hospitals and form relationships there, and people there who really might be in need of an estate plan quickly. That's another opportunity. So get creative. In general, across the different social platforms like Facebook and YouTube and X, I know there's a little Twitter bird, it's now called X, LinkedIn. It really is going to depend on who you're targeting, but anyone over the age of 18 needs an estate plan, yes. But of course, your other specialties in your firm and who you're really targeting, that's all going to come into play as well. So maybe it's Facebook, and in general, Facebook is great for casting a wide net across the mass affluent of America. So it depends, again, where your target demographic spends their time online. You can pull data like this. ChatGPT can give you data like this. Go on to Google and look for data like this. We take all of this data into consideration at White Glove, and when we market for you, this is exactly what we're paying attention to. Meetup, Eventbrite, those are also excellent websites to host your event. When you do start to market it, you have to get really specific. This is an example of how White Glove markets these seminars for our advisor hosts, right? So here are three things we're going to learn about: wealth management, trust, and planning. And then we get really specific into exactly what's going to be talked about there. So getting specific is important. If you just have a come join us to learn about estate plans, it's really not enough. You have to break it down. People want something tangible that they can latch onto before they want to actually show up to the event. Okay, tip number 2 is start with the story. Just don't start with your story. Notice how when I kicked off today's session, I did not start talking about myself, right? I went immediately into a question. Yes, we had some banter up front. I like to keep it really personal, but I went into a question. Now, this is really important because the worst way to start a seminar, presentation, a webinar is by saying, I'm Jill, I do this, I went to school here, here's my credentials, and here's why I'm important. That can be saved for a little bit later. You're actually going to have something more engaging that will serve as a conduit to your introduction, because eventually people want to hear that. But first, we got to get people hooked. It's just like a good book or a good movie. There's something that happens in the beginning. It could be a question. It could be a relatable story, an anecdote, some sort of strong statistic that's going to get people hooked. It's an attention grabber. And once you have their attention, now they're really paying attention. In fact, their brain is really wired in right now. So when you do introduce yourself, they're more likely to remember you. So what are some ideas here where, well, this is the team over at InvestWise. And so something that they use that works really well is the story about what happened with Prince and just how he completely procrastinated. Unfortunately, his estate was worth a lot of money. He had no will, no estate plan. $0 have been paid to his heirs and his family. 40% of his money went to federal taxes. It's just ongoing court administration. It's quite sad, to be honest. So all in all here, like if you start with a story like this, right, it really gets people hooked up. It gets them into what you're going to say, and now they're paying attention. And now you can sort of go into the rest of your information, who you are, why you're passionate about this, and the information that you want to share. When people hear something like this, it's a little startling, and startling is an emotion, and emotion is what's going to get them hooked into the information. Okay, tip number 3 is include visuals. So break up information to resonate with more people. This could not be more important. Gone are the days of text-based PowerPoints that are only text-based. You have to break it up. And there's even a way to make the text more alluring. So first, 90% of information transmitted to the brain is visual, and we can actually, our brains can process information that comes with an image in 13 milliseconds. And you can see here, 10% of information is retained when we hear it versus 65 when we can actually see it. I firmly believe this is why, like, children, they don't really like reading books all that much. They like watching TV and seeing imagery and like that production of it all. It's because our brains love to process that information faster. And in general, we just kind of gravitate toward anything that's fast. It's why social media has blown up and all these stories and TikToks. And I don't know if it's a bad thing, but I will tell you, when you're doing a presentation, use visuals. It's super important. So if you're doing something on estate planning, right, this is such a good example. It's not really my favorite one, to be honest. It's just one I pulled from the internet, but there are even better ones. You could make your own as well. White Glove also will partner you up with our content partners to help you get really good content for your presentations. But just like, hey, here's what would not go to probate, and here's what will go to probate, right? So I've seen variations of this. Like, is it going to go to probate? You kind of follow along the little map, if you will, the yes, no's of it all, and it leads you to exactly your answer. So this is helpful because this stuff is complex, and financial information is complex beyond estate planning. All financial information is complex unless you're a financial advisor. So using visuals will help people sort of break down that information easier and remember you. We want that. We want to be memorable. This is even just as simple as having 4 buckets on the page. Like, you're probably laughing at me right now with this example, but truthfully, like, this is better than just having a bullet point list that says taxable, tax deferred, tax-free, and income and estate tax-free. And this is based on one of our hosts who does webinars as well. So always break up the information. Okay, what I didn't include there that I did want to include was like, what if it is just text? Well, for example, on some of my slides, right, like, I have a color differentiation between the words avoid generic calls to action and then sort of this subtitle here is focus your call to action on the audience's benefit. If all of this were in white and the same size, it would probably feel a little bit overwhelming, right? So that is what I mean when you could sort of break up text, make some text bigger, make some text smaller, make some text black, make some text another color. Okay, so this is our next tip, avoid generic calls to action. I gave this presentation in person recently, and I asked the financial advisor audience, do you know what a call to action is? And like, not really anyone raised their hand. And I guess that is my fault, because as a marketer, this is like one of my favorite words. It's like in my back pocket all the time. A CTA is a call to action. A call to action is basically what you're asking your audience at the end of your session. So are you asking them to book a meeting with you? Or are you asking them to like, how are you asking them to take that next step? What is so very important here, and this is what you learn if you host webinars or seminars with us, we teach you everything, is, you know, asking something generic is not going to get the results that asking something very tangible would be. Like, for example, if you just gave a great presentation on estate planning and you said, okay, here's how you can book a meeting with me. You will get some people to book a meeting with you, certainly. But compared to saying, book an estate clarity visit with me and you're going to get ABC 1, 2, 3 with this report, you're going to have a lot more people that are going to have that incentive and want to actually book that meeting. So it's really about incentives and it's about something tangible. Okay, now this next one is the sticky note method. And I realize we are almost at that 10-minute mark and I didn't keep my promise here, but it should just be a few more minutes and then we'll open it up for Q&A. This is my favorite tip. This came from the co-founders of White Glove and some of our hosts that started using it, and it works like a charm. So if you're hosting an in-person prospecting event and you want people to take that next step, use the sticky note method. Now, the sticky note method is based on social proof. If you don't know what social proof is, essentially, when one person stands up in that room at your seminar to go do something, other people are going to stand up and follow suit. It's just human nature. This next video shows a quick and funny example of that in action. You might not be able to hear it all of the way, but this is the elevator experiment. They're all paid actors.
Is an innocent passerby. Has nothing to do with this. Everybody else in that elevator, they all work or would you fall for that? They're all in on the experiment. They're all purposefully facing the wrong way.
Purposely facing the wrong way. She's the only woman who wasn't paid.
She is facing everybody else is facing back. We're playing this to you in real time, no editing, as it actually happens. Okay, floor 2. Rebecca gets off, Emily gets on. She also works for us. We're swapping people in and out to reinforce the behavior. Emily's acting like it's the most normal. Oh, Nadia's turn. Nadia, okay, her bag is slipping off her shoulder. She's nervously playing with it.
Yeah.
Nadia is now halfway round. Will she go any further? Emily gets off, Mike gets on. Again, Mike works for the show. Presses his button, faces the back like it's the most normal thing in the world, like he does it every day. Nadia is really feeling the pressure right now.
I'm not going to see anyone else.
Stop making some small talk.
He was in celebrity rehab, I think.
She's looking towards the back of the elevator because everybody else is. Floor 4. Fourth floor, Mike gets off. Lauren gets on. Lauren also works for us. She's in. Oh, and Nadia has gone. The fourth floor, Nadia has turned all the way around. She's looking at the back of the elevator.
So essentially, and I hope you could hear that. If you couldn't, I'm sorry, but essentially everybody on that elevator was a paid actor. This is called the elevator experiment. You should look it up on YouTube. And they were all told, turn the other way, like turn the wrong way. And she was so confused. But what happened is she eventually made her way very uncomfortably. She made her way around to turn to the back of the elevator. Social proof, right? It's just when one person does something, we're naturally inclined to follow the other people doing it. This is the sticky note method. This is why, in my opinion, partly why it works so well. So here's what you do. Before you end your seminar, you have a big whiteboard in the back of the room where you're inviting people to do that estate clarity visit. And you put some sticky notes with a time and date on it. And you tell everyone, hey, it would be so difficult to try and coordinate with all of you on our calendars right now. So instead, we've made it really easy. As you walk out, grab a sticky note from the board and grab a date and time that works for you for us to talk and do that estate clarity visit where you're going to get X, Y, Z. So one person gets up, they go to grab that sticky note, and it's almost like a competitive thing. Everybody else wants to get up and go get their sticky note too. So it works. It works. We've seen it work time and time again. And it is, again, in my opinion, very much based on that psychological concept of social proof. So as soon as one person stands up, the rest do as well. Okay, for our last tip, consider partnering up. You can take on events on your own if you want. And I have definitely talked to advisors who have done that. But at the end of the day, what really starts to happen and what data shows is that when you outsource your event marketing strategy, you're going to get better results. Why? Event marketing is one of those areas in marketing that there's a lot of moving parts. And you're already probably worrying about your social media and your email list and your positioning and how your website looks. There's enough on your plate already with marketing. But when you do event marketing well, when people do it well for you, like a white glove, for example, there could be a very high revenue per new client. So there are a lot of pros. The cons you see here from this Kitsy's article that I found, it's based on people, advisors trying to do this on their own. And so you can even see here, right? It doesn't reflect the efficacy of event marketing, but rather the pitfalls and approach. And the Kitsy's article talks all about that as well. So I'm a big advocate for partnering up. And when you partner with us, we put out a whole system. I won't go into this now just for purposes of time, but we do have a system and we do have a university and we teach you everything. And again, educating on the inevitable will elevate your business. We will teach you how to do this. We will teach you how to educate. Kurt mentioned it in the beginning of the call. He's had a lot of success. And what I love is how he says, hey, I think it's important that literally anyone can replicate what I have done. Again, I've talked to advisors who've had success just implementing estate planning to begin with. And when they kick it into higher gear with the marketing, with the event marketing, it's just like this system that starts to produce leads for them. Brad Gatto, for example, he's one of our best hosts. You can look him up online and he'll be at this year's Host University. It's our annual event where we actually teach you how to do an estate planning seminar. He'll give one live in front of everybody in the room. It's super cool. He is always sharing his success with estate planning and his tips as well. This is Kelly Boyd. She's also had a lot of success, and she's done events with us where people haven't even converted until years later, right? And so you can do these seminars and you're building pipeline now, but you're also building pipeline for the future. And so again, you'll get these slides so you can kind of lean into this. She uses our system called Nurture and Engage. It's basically our seminar event follow-up system, but it's forever. It's, you know, emails, newsletters, social posts. So you can stay in touch with your prospects. That is really, really important. All right, I really wanted to drill this message in clearly because here we have it again. But if I was in person right now, I'd basically tell you, hey, it's like we're in church. I want everybody to stand up and I want us to say it all together. So if you're with me on the other side of the screen, let's just say it all together one more time. Educating on the inevitable will elevate your business. Last question here. And I'm wondering if we'll get a few more of you to say yes this time. I'm going to launch this poll here. At this point, do you consider yourself an estate planner? So in the beginning of this call, I launched this poll if you weren't here with us, and it was actually a beautiful result. 65% of people said yes, which I've never seen it that high when I asked this question before. There's a shift happening, absolutely. And if you're dropping in questions, we're about to kick off our Q&A. And it looks like, yeah, I already see one question here. Perfect. Hey, Greg, thanks for joining us. All right. Okay, I'm going to end this poll and I'm just going to push it back in front of you. So the answer is yes. More of you at this point in the webinar have said, yes, I consider myself an estate planner. And maybe you're not comfortable with that term. Maybe you want to use estate planning strategist. But again, it doesn't just belong to the legal space. So I'm so glad to see that. Now, really quick, before we get to the Q&A, if you would like to book a free one-on-one estate planning seminar strategy session with my team, where we will actually look at your market, specifically your market, and tell you what is the viability of your market for hosting an estate planning seminar or webinar. We'll give you all of our pricing. How does our performance-based marketing model work? Because yes, we are a PBM company, which means that you don't pay for people who don't show up to the seminar when we host it for you. If you want to learn about our guarantee, if you don't get a client within 12 months, how we'll rerun a seminar for you for free, all of that, I highly recommend you hit the QR code here with your phone or your camera. If you're also just like, I don't feel like getting my phone out right now, you can also just type the word seminar in the chat, and our team will make sure we grab your information and we'll send you an invite link where you can book your estate planning seminar strategy session. So again, you just type the word seminar in the chat. We will look up your viability for your market. Is there other people doing webinars in your market or seminars in your market? What's the viability there? We have systems that pull a lot of data, as we all know in today's day and age with AI, we can really pull a lot of data. And so we can share with you, like, where is the wealth? And sometimes you know your market better than we do, and that's okay. But it's important that we sort of collaborate through that process together. And again, we've hosted over 50,000 different workshops. So love to see some of you putting in the word seminar in the chat. Again, there's that QR code I showed. And while we do the Q&A, I will just leave this last slide up. This last slide is essentially talking about Host University, which I'm going to be at, and I got to go last year and I got to speak. It's a 2-day event, and this is in Clearwater Beach, Florida, which is now right down the road from me and where I got engaged on Friday. So very special place to me. But this is essentially a 2-day like peer-to-peer learning event where you're going to hear these best practices from advisors, what's working, whether it's estate planning or taxes and retirement, because we do a lot of different topics that work really well. And you get to watch these things happen live. You get the strategies and the insights, and you're hearing from advisors. You're not hearing from vendors. It's not a sales pitch. It's advisors doing this super well. And yes, Brad Gatto will be there. Shay Swanson, for example. We had so many star advisors there last year. Also, the last thing I'll say is it does cost $499, but we will give you $500 towards our services. So really you're paying $1, or there's $1 net profit, if you will. You're not even paying anything. There's $1 net profit. So that's the page where you can register. Okay. I'd love to introduce really quickly Ayla. Ayla is one of our marketing consultants. She is an expert at everything that we just talked about. And I wanted to pull her in for the Q&A just to add more substance, because she's on calls with you guys all day long talking about hosting estate planning seminars. So Ayla, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. Estate planning is probably one of my favorite topics that we offer and in my coaching calls, so I'm happy to join.
Yay. Awesome. Okay, so it looks like I'm going to scroll up here in the chat. And guys, just FYI, we do have the Q&A box open as well. Might actually be a little bit easier to monitor at this point, but I'm going to pull this open. I did see a question from Greg. He says, do you suggest partnering with an estate planning attorney to do the seminars? What are your thoughts on that, Ela?
So this, I get this question all the time, and I think that a lot of it is preference. So there's a couple different options or ways that you could go about hosting the estate planning seminars. I think it's great to have an estate planning attorney, but I really want you to be the face in the forefront of these workshops because as an advisor presenting on estate planning, I think it's easy to get lost. A lot of people will say, oh, I'm only here for a will and trust. So I typically recommend having an attorney there with you, but I always recommend that you be the presenter. You can present on everything, including the estate planning. Have that advisor, or I'm sorry, that estate planning attorney there to kind of agree with you or answer any quick questions, but you should be presenting the whole workshop.
Yeah, I agree. And that's exactly what I've heard from other advisors as well, is like they can just kind of call on them to answer a question when necessary. So that's a great answer. What about marketing costs? Because another person kind of asked the same thing. Partnering with an attorney, do you recommend sharing marketing costs?
You can typically. The thing is, if sharing marketing costs fully, sometimes then they do want to speak. Typically, I tell them maybe have them pay for refreshments, maybe have them pay for the room costs. You could have them chip in like a little bit, but that's something that is kind of worked out like based on partners or how the relationship works.
Totally agree. Highly individual. John asked a question that I don't have an answer to personally. I'm inclined to do some Googling right now, maybe some chat GPTing, but is there an estate planning designation available for advisors?
So we work with a few companies. I know Estate Guru is one of them where you can do all the documents yourself. So those are routes. I think we've got a couple more too that we can send out. John, I'll send you some resources for those. I'll take down your name. But Estate Guru is a great program that you can use. It's an upfront cost. You get to do X amount per year based on the package that you select, but it allows you to work with the advisor or you to work with the clients to create those documents so that you don't need to work directly with an attorney unless you want to. I hope that answers your question. If not, like I said, I'll send over some information on those programs.
Yeah, and we have I love that. We have a lot of great relationships in the space. I think all of them have some sort of special sauce that they bring to the table, which is cool. I am trying to get ChatGPT to load just so I can see, because he's really asking more about like a designation. So like there's the CFP, for example, or the AIF, but like for estate planning, let me do my research here and we'll figure it out. We'll move on to the next question. I'll come back to you on that too. This is a good question. Pricing, people want to know if they want to work with White Glove, like what do we charge for a household to attend a workshop?
So that's going to depend, obviously, well, I mean, we're here talking about estate planning. So the estate planning topic is $299 per attending household. And then we work based on your budget. So you would be able to select how many households you wanted to attend from there. And then we follow best practices based on times, dates, and then that does differ per topic. We do also, and I know you didn't even get into this, so this might be like a wormhole, but we do also offer a few other options since our merger in December. We've got some direct mail options as well that we can use for estate planning, and they have some digital add-ons as well for that.
Yeah, that's super exciting. We basically beefed up the entire program. And there's a lot more options, but like, you know, direct mail and like even dinner seminars, like you have to be really good with your marketing to get that stuff to work. And that's exactly why we partnered up with one of the biggest seminar marketing companies. So now we are the biggest. So by the way, just as you were saying that, I did a little research. So apparently there is with the American College, and I should know this because I do some work with the American College of Financial Services, but there's an accredited estate planner designation. It's called an AEP, Financial Professionals Looking to Specialize in Estate Planning. So it looks like there's a few others. If you just do a quick Google search, you can find out that information. Investopedia also has an article on it. Okay, so we answered the question on cost, and let's see here. We've got, okay, we've already answered that question too. All right, Kimberly has an interesting and fun question. She says, we had a very successful themed seminar about financial communication in February and are planning an estate planning seminar on that template in October. Is a spooky estate planning seminar tasteless or a ton of fun? I feel like
I love a good theme.
okay.
So, I mean, I feel like I would be here for it. I would keep it probably like professional, as much as you can, but I think it would be fun to maybe put like candy out or maybe put some things up in the room. I mean, I probably wouldn't wear like a mask or anything like that. What have you ever seen those?
Not the spooky theme, to be totally honest. But I think if you know your audience and that is something that you guys could have some fun with, and of course, there's still the layer of professional and also a tone of seriousness, right? It's a really important topic. I think if you can nail that, then I also think a theme could be fun, but you definitely know your audience better than we do.
Yeah, I was thinking like maybe like candy, like Halloween candy, or like a bucket would be cute, or like little spider rings, but
Yep.
nothing like crazy.
Yep. So I just got another question. I'm just sending in a written response to. Just wanted to clarify that, like, advisors aren't creating the documents. You're not telling your clients what documents to create. You are letting them log into the technology to actually create their own documents. And you can provide them with resources. Like I know, for example, Trust and Will, they use like sort of this guide, this implementation guide that says, here's all the things you're going to need. But the client is actually the one logging into the technology and going through the questionnaires, going through the assessments. Sorry, the dog made its way into the office. Going through the assessments and actually building their own plan. And the technology is what actually makes the recommendations on the type of documents. So
yes,
wanted to clarify that.
Yeah,
here.
I would never expect an advisor to handle a lot of the documents. And I know I was saying earlier, you should be the face. So you honestly don't need to deal with an attorney at all if you don't want to. He doesn't need to be there. You can start the workshop by saying, I know a lot of you came here tonight to learn about wills and trusts. Well, I'm here to tell you that there are several steps that you need to do and things that you need to get ready before you get to that point. That's why I'm here as a financial advisor. Because everyone hears the term estate planning and they immediately think attorney, and that term's really been hijacked. So you are the front and face of that. And we do several coaching calls on how to figure that out. So if you don't even want to partner with an attorney or get yourself in that area of wills and trusts, there's no need to.
Absolutely. Yep. Okay. That's the beauty of what technology has really done and scaled and streamlined. And these technology platforms as well, folks, they usually have some sort of outlet or they almost always have an outlet. They should, but they almost always have an outlet of, you can contact an attorney that's in your network. So John says, what is the advantage of the technology? I would think that cost is one. Does the technology allow for the client to update the estate plan more easily? Yes. Do any of the technologies allow for an advisor to have access to the document output? Yes. The answer to both of those questions is yes. It does allow you to be closer to the process because you'll also get like a read-only view of the documents. And if the technology is really good, it's also giving you alerts to say, hey, this, might be a good time to bring this up in this annual review because XYZ, or it's been a certain amount of time, or there's so many different scenarios here. Or if your client's using the technology well and they're plugging in their own updates about moving or having a baby, I'm sure you know these things, but sometimes you don't know everything, then it'll also send you alerts on that information. And so it's just really keeping the both of you as transparent as possible throughout the process, which is key here. Okay, so Stephen says, I may have missed the answer to this, but is the pricing per household direct mail or digital, or a combination of the two?
So the pricing for the $299 is based on attending household for the white glove done for you model. So we are in the middle of a merger And I'm so happy to announce we will soon have a new name, a little bit more of a combined platform. So for right now, I still refer to them as White Glove Model. And then the company we merged with is Acquire Direct, also known as Lead Jig. So that direct mail model would be a pay upfront model, where we would work together to create a mailer, kind of your target radius, but that one is pay upfront because there are no guarantees on that model. So White Glove is pay per household and only for the attending household.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you for that clarification. So while we get in any last minute questions here, I know I've got this slide pulled up on Host University. I just want to say it one more time because so many of these questions too, and just general questions that we get on like, all right, how do I really start? Like, what's the best way to go about this? We're going to cover in this event. It's also in Clearwater, Florida, which rocks. It's the best beach in my opinion. I'm obviously a little bit biased, but I love Clearwater Beach. We have a lot of fun. So I really think if you want to like get really involved in this new forum of marketing your business, then this is a great place to be. If you can't make it, of course, that is okay. You can also just scan this QR code and you can get on one of the executive marketing consultants' calendars and they will give you an estate planning seminar strategy session. So they're going to explain to you how this all works, really dive deep into the pricing, share with you what our results are across the board, because that's really important. And I didn't cover that today. I really just honed in on a couple of different advisors. But if you've been on any of my past webinars, you've seen what that looks like. And we will also just be covering your market specifically. Everywhere is different. And we never want to host two advisors in the same market at the same time. So that is a promise from us as well, is we want to make sure you actually do get good results for this investment. It is an investment. But again, if people don't show up, you also aren't going to pay for households that we promised you and we couldn't deliver on. Do you want to talk about that at all, Ayla? Just like that model that we have?
Yeah, so this model it's a really different model. It's a unique model. And really the idea behind White Glove, as many of you have built your business, was doing seminars. And our founders are financial advisors. They still have a practice here in Troy, Michigan, where I'm based. And they obviously are still active doing seminars. So while they were building their business, our founder thought, this sucks, while he was planning workshops. And he'll tell you to this day, I'm not a party planner, I'm a financial planner. So they set out to find a company that would really help take a lot of that work off of their plate, but also help with that financial risk. And they couldn't find what they were looking for. So that's how they found White Glove. Or how they founded White Glove, I'm sorry, is you're not going to pay anything up front with this model. You and I will work together. We'll go over best practices. We'll set up a plan on what is the ideal workshop for you. If you ask me for 30 households, our team knows that there's about a 50% drop off between those who register and those who attend. So we're going to take on roughly 60, maybe even 70 registrations if we can, based on your area. You only pay me for who's in the room the day of the workshop. So if you ask for 30 and there's a storm, or maybe traffic's just bad, or unknown reason, only 15 show up, you're only going to pay for those 15 households. Everyone else who registered, those extra 45, 55, we're going to give you free of charge. They're yours. Throw them in a drip campaign, reach out to them, schedule appointments. So this model really does kind of help you if we can't fulfill that marketing, but it's one of my favorite models. I've been at White Glove 3.5 years, so it's really a different option to kind of help people for the unknown.
Absolutely. And I've been in the marketing space for advisors for a few years, and you don't really get anything like that. So that's why I like to put a highlight on that. Thank you, Ayla. Thank you for coming on to do the Q&A with me. Folks, we are a few minutes over the top of the hour, so I'm going to let you all go, but we are so appreciative that you joined us today. I hope that you walked away with some inspiration. You have everything that you need. You're doing the work already in so many ways. And we hope that, again, we could inspire you to maybe take that next step and really use this marketing magnet in your business to attract more business to deepen those relationships with your clients and to differentiate yourself. As the competition grows, there couldn't be another way here that I think is better, because it's filling a gap for consumers and it's also differentiating you at the same time. So thank you, Stephen. Thank you, everybody who chimed in. We hope you have a great rest of your week. And again, you can scan this QR code to book a call with our team, type the word seminar in the chat, or join us at Host You in Clearwater, Florida. See you soon.